Hello and welcome back to the Blackburn End podcast. This is another episode of our Behind Enemy Lines feature. You will see I am not on my own. I will be delighted to let my guest introduce himself and where we can find himself and the podcast.
My name's Ian. I'm a contributor to the Forever Bristol City podcast, and you can find me on Twitter under my own name, no assumed identity, and also the username @RealBristolBoy. And you can find Forever Bristol City podcast once again on Twitter, or X as it's called now, and you can also find us on YouTube. We normally do an aftermatch assessment, and we do some separate interviews with, for example, we did a very good interview with technical director Brian Tinian just before the start of the transfer window, and we'll be doing another one after that. We also interviewed the Bristol Sport, and Bristol Sport are the organisation that Steve Lansdowne owns, and they include Bristol City, Bristol Bears, the women's team, the basketball Bristol Flyers, and they all play pretty much at Ashton Gate.
Thank you very much, Fine. Well, I'm sure lots of our Rovers fans will head over to your channel, particularly after the game. It's always good to get the opposition's view of the game. It's, we all see it through our own eyes, don't we? But it's good to get an alternative view, I think. So in terms of Bristol, their start to the season, transfers, how will you guys feel that you've shaped up for the season, and are you expected the start that you've had so far?
I would say that the start isn't exactly what I expected. Our activity, you have to rewind to the end of last season. Our problem was scoring goals. In terms of reaching the playoffs, we finished 15 to 20 goals short of what we'll need in 4 wins. So we needed to, in essence, if we'd have won 2 more at home and 2 more away, we'd have been up with Norwich. So Liam Manning set out a plan to improve us in the final third. So at the start of the season, start of this summer window, the players we needed in his eyes were a 7, a 10 and a 9. Now, going back to the winter window, we'd signed 3 players then that we wouldn't be able to have until the summer. One was Max Bird from Derby, who we signed in the winter and loaned him back to Derby. The other one was a guy called Adam Murphy, who we signed from the League of Ireland. And the idea with Adam was to get him into really full-time professional football. And the other fella was Josh Stokes, and we loaned him back to Aldershot. And now he's come in, he's had a full pre-season with us, and we subsequently, because we signed 2 10s in Scott Twine and George Earthy on loan from West Ham. So we've loaned him back to Cambridge United. And he, according to comments from Cambridge United fans, he's doing really well for them.
Great.
I think so. Altogether, if you include the 3 lads we brought in the summer, in fact, you could say 4, because we signed a player called Taylor Gardner-Hickman that had been on loan to us from West Brom. All in all, we signed 11 players.
So I think a name that Rovers fans won't be too keen to hear is Scott Twine. But in terms of Andy Vyman, thoughts on the decision to not renew his contract, and your thoughts on Andy Vyman as a footballer? Obviously, he's endeared himself to Rovers fans somewhat already. He's scored 3 goals and a bit of a wonder strike against our local rivals, shall we call them?
Yeah, you call them the Dingles, don't you?
I certainly do.
There's first of all, I saw parts of the game. It was a fantastic goal, and that's exactly what he's capable of doing. That's no fluke. Andy really had done well. He came in originally under Lee Johnson. I think we signed him from Derby, and he's a player that can frustrate. When he did really well for us, he was playing behind Antoine Semenyo, who's now moved on and doing extremely well for Bournemouth. and a chap called Dave Martin, who's also an ex Derby player, but a very experienced, what you could call back to goal centre forward. And he was playing largely in the 10 role. And that for me is his best position. I wouldn't play him wide right, wide left. I mean, he even played left wing back for us once. But that was his in the second half at Millwall, and he actually helped turn the game around from that position. You never believe it, but we won the game. Andy can take chances. He's a good finisher. Yeah, he's lost a yard of pace. That's true to say. But one of the reasons that he went is he wasn't getting regular football under Liam Manning. I mean, I don't think he was getting that regular football that particular season before Liam Manning came in. But I mean, Andy had an absolutely fantastic season where I think I'm right in saying he scored 21, 22 goals and got 13 assists in the Championship. But a lot of that was the three guys he was up front with, and we beat Derby away when Wayne Rooney was in charge, and Rooney described them as the best front three in the Championship. So obviously we lost Antoine. He wanted to move on, and you can tell now by how well he's doing for Bournemouth and the fact that he's just signed a bumper 5-year contract with a whacking great release clause in it down at Bournemouth. That you can see there's no way we were going to hang on to him, and obviously we didn't hang on to Alex Scott, and he went down to Bournemouth as well. So you know, it is when a Premier League club comes calling, same as Palace did with Wharton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we all know that one all too well, don't we? In terms of the season, then, so hopes and expectations going into it, and sort of now have they changed? Has the transfer window changed that? Has the start of the season changed it? And where do you hope and expect you'll be as we get towards the business end of the season?
When we were only going to sign a 7, a 9, and a 10, I thought progress from last season would be in the top 10 all season and challenging for the top 6. But whether we got in it or not would depend on a lot of things. Form, we've been blighted with injuries to players for the last 4 seasons. The season that Nigel Pearson came in and took over from Dean Holden, at one point we had 21 players injured. And the reason that is a lot, isn't it? And the reason for that was experienced players were getting injured, and we were bringing in our academy players to take over for them, and they were promptly pulling calf muscles, tearing their hamstrings, and things like this. And we've got a facility called the High Performance Centre, or HPC for short, that was one of the investments that Steve Lansdowne made in the infrastructure. You call it a training ground if you want, but I mean, it's got everything. It's about 25 million quid's worth. It's got everything you want, cryogenic chambers and God knows what. But I renamed that the Hamstring Probability Centre because we seem to be losing an inordinate number of players to hamstring injuries. And guess what? This season we've gone that way again. So we've got Rob Dickey out, Sam Bell out, a really promising younger player called Ray Nelson, all out with hamstring injuries. So already. Now, hopefully they'll be back within about 6 weeks. So if we get a fair wind and better luck with injuries and with the signings that we've made, and really pleased, to be honest, with all of them, even though we've had to sell a couple of players to fund it, then I would say, yeah, top 10 all season and challenging for the top 6. With a fair wind, you get in the top 6. If not, you might fall a bit short and have to go again next season.
Yeah, sounds pretty similar, I think. In terms of Blackburn, then, have you any memories of games against Blackburn? Any thoughts on how they're getting on so far this season?
Well, you're going well. I particularly like, and is the lad, is it Gay you pronounce his name? The big lad up front. He got sent off for 2 yellows against Burnley.
Yeah, he did.
I think he's suspended this week, isn't he?
He is, fortunately for yourselves, yeah.
Yeah, and I was glad of that because I rate him as a player. Really like the Japanese player, Ohashi.
Yeah.
We signed a Japanese lad as well called Yu Hirakawa. And that's boosted the shirt sales in Japan.
Yeah.
So, and I've actually got Japanese followers now on X.
Yeah.
So they take it really seriously. He could well start the game at Blackburn. He's a right winger, a bit of a flyer, very tricky, skillful, quick. So I'm glad we brought him in. He's in on loan with an option stroke obligation to buy him for not a lot of money at the end of the year. So, but looking at you've gone well. I saw the game against Derby because that was on the TV, and I thought you were absolutely excellent in that, particularly in the second half. And it was the opposite of our game against Derby. I mean, so far this season we've played four, we won one, drew two, and lost one. Now, both the draws we should have won, and this is managers and opposition fans that are saying, yeah, they should have beat you, they should have beat us. We've had one very, very dodgy penalty given against us when the ball struck George Tanner in the chest against Millwall, and the referee awarded a penalty because his gut. He said afterwards it was his gut feeling that it was a penalty, so he didn't actually see it, but he just felt he should give it. So that's how it goes. But that was a game in which we were 2-0 up after 12 minutes. 15 minutes into the second half, we're 3-2 down. So we brought on one of the strikers that we signed in the summer, a guy called Fali Malula, who came from an Austrian club, but he's French Congolese. 6'4", very skillful, a lot better on the ground. You see a guy like that and you think he's going to be dynamite in the air. He's not bad in the air, but he's much better on the ground. Bit of a cliche, but really good touch for a big guy.
Yeah.
And he's got a couple of goals for us. Scott Twine got the winner in that game. We ran out winning 4-3. To be fair, we totally outplayed Coventry, who were a good side. And they had one shot on target in 90 minutes. We drew 1-1. Derby, Hull away, first game of the season, defended badly, I would say, for the first 15, 20 minutes. Could have been easily 2-0 down. By the end of the game, we could have scored 4 or 5. Now, the game against Derby was a strange one. We could have won that game. Well, we should have been 3-4-1 up at halftime. 4 really good passable chances, not half chances, but real good chances. And their keeper saved 2, and Scott Twine missed 2. So, it's a little. I know it's a little bit like if you're anti, but if things had gone a bit better, we'd have been. We could have easily had another 6 points. We haven't. We are where we are, and we need to start taking our chances because, well, I don't need to tell you, in the Championship, you don't take your chances. Sooner or later, someone's going to do something special, or somebody's going to make a mistake, and then all of a sudden you're out the game.
Yeah, I think it sounds similar to our start. Really, I think we have taken those chances is probably the difference. I think there's games where against Oxford we managed to get the win, but you could have easily have drawn that game at best to some extent. I think Norwich away, obviously we scored a late goal. We were the better team for a while, and then they got back in it. We ended up salvaging a draw, but if you'd have lost that game, you couldn't really have complained either. So, so it sounds like two similar teams really at this point. So in terms of heading into Saturday now, Ian, how do you think the game will sort of go in terms of the pattern of it? And then we'll ask you for your all-important prediction.
I think there'll be goals. I think the two playing styles may well complement each other in producing a good game, because we're very possession based. And I think I didn't take too much notice of the stats at Burnley, because if you just looked at the stats, you'd have thought you got battered. But I think you're a side that is probably more comfortable out of possession than we are. And we're probably a team that wants to dominate possession and create chances. And in fairness, we've been doing that. Our problem is dodgy penalties aside, we've conceded 3 goals in 2 games. Actually, 6 goals in the second half. No, sorry,
Right.
5 goals in the second half of those 2 games. So I think it was 2 complementary playing styles. If you twisted my arm and made me take a bet, I'd probably say a score draw is the most likely result. And I mean, after losing it Derby, I think a score goal would be an okay result. We've got some, and following that, we've got some winnable games, I think, coming up. But if you don't put the ball in the net, you don't win the games. And our problem's been, on average, conceding 2 a game,
Right.
and not scoring as many.
Well, it certainly sounds like it could be it could be an interesting game because we have found ourselves out of possession at times, and we're quite comfortable doing that, like you say. I mean, at Burnley, what happened was we went down to 10 men, we changed our playing style, and we just shut the game down, and nothing happened. They didn't have a shot on target for the last half an hour. But equally, we found against Oxford, which we were a bit worried about under Eustace, that we might be a do not lose team against Oxford, against Derby. He's actually tried to take the game to them. So I think you're right. I think it could be open from my point of view. We've tended to score, most of our goals in the second half at the moment, actually, as well. So it'll be interesting how that. I mean, in some ways, it sounds like it will play out exactly how it has for the season so far. But we all know the Championship, I think, don't we? So expect the unexpected. Watch this be a 0-0 board draw now.
Well, that's I said there'd be plenty of goals when we played Coventry, and it was they had 1 shot on target in 90 minutes, and it went in the net, and it was one of our former players that scored it. So I mean, just to rub salt in the wounds. But
Yeah.
no, I think it'd be entertaining. I mean, memories of Blackburn. I remember coming up there years and years ago, Ewood Park, and winning 1-0. And a chap called Rob Newman scored, and he was
Yeah.
until recently he was the recruitment director at West Ham.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
but I remember that was a side footer, and I was up behind the goal then, and that went in. I don't think there'll be as many. I mean, we took over 3,000 fans to Derby. I don't. I mean, Blackburn have given us 980 tickets, and whether we'll sell all of those, I don't know. I think there's about 850, 860
Right.
gone so far. There's no pay on the day, so however many we sell, that is
Right.
how many will go there. But we've got the following away game to Swansea, is a sellout. So
Yeah.
people, it's like cost of living crisis. It's a long way.
Yeah.
It's not the best trip in the world going to the northwest and then coming back again.
Yeah.
So as somebody that travelled home and away pretty much every game for 25 years, I can appreciate how people will say, well, yeah, I'd like to go, but I can't really afford it. So they'll
Yeah.
try and watch the game through another medium. But
Yeah.
I think we'd be reasonably well supported, but it won't be as many as we took to Derby. So hopefully, with a smaller weight following, we might actually win and not let people down.
Well, what I will say is thank you very much and good luck for the rest of the season after Saturday, I'm going to say. But yes, in
Yeah.
terms of, I can completely appreciate that. I mean, we've got a local away game after yourselves. We've got Preston away. So we'll take 5,500 there. But similarly, if we were coming down to Ashton Gate, I think it'd be a similar number, to be fair. Yeah, it's quite a long trip, isn't it?
Yeah, and people. The other factor, of course, it depends how many tickets you get given.
Yeah.
I think we started off getting about 1,500 from Derby, and then we asked for more and asked for more, and in the end, we had the maximum, which is, I think, it's about 3,025 or some obscure figure like that. But yeah, it was good to go out there. Obviously, we've got some ex-Derby players in our team, and they didn't have
Mm.
their best games up there, so we got some earache for that as well. But it's it's one of them things. I mean, you don't know. It's who's decent on the day. I think our lot are travelling up tomorrow, overnight, staying at a hotel, and
Yeah.
then we'll see how the game goes. But yeah, like I say, if I had to bet, I'd say a score draw. But Championship is almost impossible to predict. I think, certainly at this stage of the season.
Absolutely. Well, we'll go with the score draw, and undoubtedly Andy Vyman and Scott Twine will get on the score sheet as well. So Yeah. Right. And if you just want to remind everyone where we can find you, because I'm sure, like I said, the Rovers fans will head across, particularly after the game, to have a look at your match reaction and get your side of it, really.
We'll be doing a podcast at 6 o'clock tomorrow after the game. And that's it. Forever Bristol City. And you can find us on YouTube. You can watch live on Twitter, X, if you will. And you can also make comments as the podcast progresses. So if you like to do that, that's great, and we'll no doubt we'll let's hope we're all still friends. We're all still friends tomorrow night.
I'm sure we will be. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Please do head over to like and subscribe in his channel. We like to support each other's podcasts. It's always great to get another viewpoint from the opposition. And from our point of view, please continue to like and subscribe to the Blackburn podcast. It makes such a difference on YouTube to the algorithm. It'll end up popping in people's feeds that might like it. They might not. They might support Burnley and it might just wind them up. So equally, everybody's a winner. But thank you very much. We'll be out with another podcast on Tuesday morning. But remember to like and subscribe. And thank you very much.